When my mom told me she was marrying her new boyfriend, David, just 6 months after my dad got convicted of bank fraud, something in me just broke, and I couldn't digest that. I was 17 when they took my dad away. He'd been a small business owner, this quiet guy who spent his weekends fixing up neighbors' lawnmowers and coaching my little league team on the side. The prosecution said he'd siphoned $200,000 out of his own company account. He swore up and down he'd been set up, but the paper trail all pointed at him, and he ended up with 7 years in a federal facility. I was very disturbed after finding that my dad would be jailed for 7 years, but the day they took him, something in my mom just switched off. It was like she erased him overnight. Within a week, David had moved into our house. Loud guy, flashy, wore this cologne that made me a little nauseous every time he walked past. On day 1, my mom sat me down and told me, straight-faced, that David was my new father figure now, and that I needed to stop bringing up a convicted felon. I stared at her face with absolute shock and couldn't believe it. I was disgusted. But here's the thing she never found out. I never stopped talking to my dad. Every Tuesday after school, I'd walk 3 miles to the public library. I'd made a fake email just so I could message him through the prison's messaging system. And every Thursday night, he'd write back, told me to keep my head down, stay focused on school, and never, ever give up on him. Every time I read those emails, I felt like, can I just meet him once? Things went from uncomfortable to genuinely scary right around my 18th birthday. David started getting way too comfortable. He'd sit at the kitchen table in his undershirt, sipping coffee, just watching me walk by. Started saying stuff like, turning into quite the pretty young lady, Sarah. Your mom sure got lucky having you. I brought it up to my mom. She actually scoffed at me, called me ungrateful, dramatic, said David was just being friendly and that I should be thanking him for paying the grocery bill. I can clearly see the bias, but I stayed quiet. That night, after she'd gone to sleep, David opened my bedroom door. Didn't step inside, just stood there in the doorway, his whole silhouette blocking the hallway light, leaned against the frame and said, quiet, you know what happens to little girls who try to ruin a good thing, right? I was terrified. I didn't say a word back to him, but the second he left, I emailed my dad everything. David's comments, my mom brushing it off, how trapped I felt in my own house, everything, even the wrong stare every morning. 2 days later, my dad wrote back something that made my stomach drop. Not the usual hang in there. 3 words, check the floorboard. I sat there staring at the screen, heart pounding, and went back through 3 years of old emails trying to figure out what he meant. Stupid. Buried in a message from the week before his trial, there it was. This tiny detail I totally missed as a scared 17-year-old. He'd mentioned hiding a backup hard drive under a loose floorboard in the hall closet behind some old paint cans. I waited until midnight. House was dead silent, except for David snoring down the hall. Crept out, bare feet freezing on the hardwood, snuck into the closet, pulled 3 cans of yellow paint out of the way, and felt around in the dark until my fingers hit something cold and metal. Then I saw an external hard drive wrapped in bubble wrap. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped it walking back to my room. I plugged it into my laptop, put my headphones in, and opened the files. And what was on there made my blood go cold. Seriously! It wasn't financial records. It was audio. Turns out my dad had installed a voice recorder in his office months before his arrest because he already suspected someone was stealing from him. And on the very last recording, dated 3 days before he got arrested, I heard David's voice. As David wasn't just some guy my mom had started dating, he'd been my dad's accountant. On the tape, he was on the phone with someone laughing about how easy it was to plant digital signatures on my dad's computer and how my mom had already fallen for him completely. Hook, line, and sinker. I had tears on my eyes after knowing this. That afternoon, they got a warrant and searched our house. I was standing in the driveway with my uncle when the cruisers pulled up. My mom came storming out onto the porch, screaming at the officers, demanding to know what this was about. David walked out behind her, and I watched his face go completely pale the second he saw the warrant. I knew he's going to bear the brunt now. When they cuffed him and walked him down the steps, my mom just lost it, screaming at me. How could you do this to our family? He loves us. I walked right up to her and said, he framed Dad, and you let him into our house. She just froze. I watched it hit her all at once, the color draining out of her face, while the detective played a 10-second clip of David's voice right there on the front lawn. 2 weeks later, they dropped every charge against my father. I'll never forget the morning he walked out of those prison doors. He looked older, hair gone gray, shoulders a little more worn down after 3 years locked up for something he never did. The second he saw me by my uncle's truck, his whole face lit up with that same warm smile I remembered from being a kid. Felt like it is the best moment of my life. I was jumping in pure joy. I ran across that parking lot and just threw my arms around him, crying into his shoulder. I held on so tight I could barely breathe, whispering over and over, "You saved me, kiddo, you saved me." My mom tried to fix things afterward. Called 100 times, left these long, rambling voicemails begging for forgiveness, saying David had manipulated her too, that she was a victim in all this. My dad signed the divorce papers without saying a single word back to her. Things just can't be repaired. These days, my dad and I live in a little 2-bedroom place a few towns over. He started a small landscaping business. I'm in my 2nd year of college now, studying criminal justice. We still sit out on the porch every Thursday night, coffee in hand, talking about what's next. We went through hell to get here, but we made it out the other side together.